Okay, so we'll move on to what we have to do for today, right? So today we wanted to talk about editing. So now, if you think about Microsoft Word, if you think about what really are the entirety of the functions that are there on Word, one is you start with an intent to create a particular type of document, right? That particular type of document is created with a particular audience in mind. That in your mind will give you things like, what is the style, what is the format, what should be the structure of the document, and all of those things. And then you start writing something which we call as the first draft. So you start by writing a first draft. Now, typically, if you ask anybody who works on long stretches of text, they will say that it is a good idea. It is a good idea to always write your first draft in a flow, right? There are some people who tend to edit their work while writing. So you are writing and you are editing at the same time. The problem with that is, editing a document is a never ending activity. So you are never truly finished with editing. And I'll tell you this: 2 years ago, I published a book, right? And even today, I honestly don't pick that book up and read it myself, because it is sort of annoying, because every time I read it, there is always a word that I want to change or a sentence that I want to rewrite, and there's something that I want to do, right? So that just goes on to show how editing is not something that ever goes away, or editing is not something that is ever complete. So you can only have something that you think is good enough for now. It's always going to be an ongoing, never ending process. So if you do it while you are writing, your progress is going to be greatly hampered. So my suggestion, as well as the suggestions of anybody who works with a lot of text, is always to write all of it in one single go. In one single run, you write the whole thing. And then once you've written, you come back and revisit the document to edit it. Okay. So that's when you are going to make multiple types of changes. You're going to make a whole different types of changes. What are the various changes that you can make? For example, you can go ahead and adjust the style. You can go ahead and adjust the format. We've already seen how to adjust the style. We've already seen how to adjust the format. That's something which is once again going to be utilized in as part of the editing. While you are editing, you will also want to take a look at the language. You want to read the entire thing, you want to read all of it, and you want to take a look at the language and see if that language is something that you are happy with. And third thing is, you want to make sure that you think, while reading the document, you think of it from your audience's shoes, right? You're not looking at it from your own shoes. So you're not yourself when you are reading the document. When you're giving it a final read for editing, you are looking at it, you are putting yourself in your audience's shoes and think, does this document satisfy their needs or not? So anyway, the first step, therefore, is to read the document clearly, or read the document once again in great detail. Now this is a bit of a problem for many people. One, because when you have been writing a particular document, say, you're writing a report, you're writing a paper, you're writing some sort of a journal article, and all of you would have noticed that at some point, when you are intimately familiar with the whole content, when you're reading, when you're writing it, you're reading it multiple times, you're intimately familiar with that content, then when you start reading, you will realize that you are missing key points in that. You are missing a lot of different points, because your eyes, your brain is so familiar with it. Your brain has been reading it so much, you are not able to read it clearly again. So I'll give you one small tip for it. If you just want to read something, and let's assume that you've been very familiar with this content you've been writing, so just temporarily change the font to something else. Okay, just temporarily changing the font to something else will make the document look different, and then you can start reading, make your corrections, grammatical, sentence corrections, etc., and then finally revert the change back to whatever your original document was. This works only while you are editing the content, does not work while you are editing the style or something. That's fine, right? That is okay. All right. So that's something that I would suggest as a tip. But basically the process of editing starts with reading. So if you remember, I was saying that there are different view modes here. We have so far been on what is called the print layout view, right? The print layout view. If I bring my mouse here, I am over here in case you are able to follow, right? In case you are not able to follow, I am over here, right? So this print layout view, next to it is something called the reading mode. So let me click the reading mode, and now you see this entire document has become more readable. Okay, depending on the monitor that you are using, you may not want it to be on a very wide kind of a thing. So you may want to keep it narrow columns, you may want to keep it in the default, right? So the default looks like page. Okay, now again, word default is to have white color, is to have the white color page. That is what is the default. Why is it that the default? Because your ultimately the page on which you are going to print, the vast majority of papers available in the world are all white papers. However, when you are reading, sometimes having a little bit of color to it helps. Little bit of color to it helps, especially in situations like, suppose you are reading at night and the rest of the room is a little on the darker side, then you have a page like this. There's a lot of glare that can throw your eyes off. It'll hurt your eyes. So what can you do? You can change the page color to inverse, right? Remember, this is just there to read. None of this has changed the color on the final document. And if you look at your final print layout of the document, it's still the same. Just the reading mode alone is in dark. You want to have it a little more of a natural color, choose sepia, right? A slightly yellow color of books, printed books, novels, etc., have a paper in that slightly yellow color. This replicates that particular color. So like I was saying, you have all sorts of things. You can change the format, you can change the column width that you want, you can change the page color, you can have a different kind of layout. You may want just like a paper, how a paper is, right? You can have that. But again, if you notice, the ribbon has now disappeared, so it's a lot less clutter. It's a lot of distraction free kind of writing. So you can have the paper view of it, you can have the column layout depending on how you want. If for people who, this typically is for people who are not very good readers, non-English speakers, people from other countries, like many Europeans are not native English speakers, Germans and so on. For them to read, they often find it easier if it is marked by syllables, right? So all of this is broken by syllables. This also helps for us, for a younger person to practice. If a younger person wants to practice reading, so video provides a powerful way. So this is just a help for reading. So you can have the syllable view, or you can have a little more text spacing, again helps to read. So all of these are situations. Suppose you have to record a video, okay, and you have the text running on a screen in front of you, then the regular view might be too overwhelming and you might just mix up a few lines. So these kind of things with more text spacing will help you to read. So all of these are things for you to find where you might want to make changes. You can edit here, right? You go back and then it brings you back to the print layout view to edit. So that is only for reading. So there are various forms of reading tools available over here. You can also let it read it out to you. Okay, so you can just say read aloud, and the computer is going to read it out for you, right? I don't know if you can hear it. Okay, so it will go on reading the whole thing out for you. So all of this is just for you to read this. You can have focus mode, which will reduce the rest of the distractions even more. Okay, so all of the distractions are gone. You're just left with the text. This is there for you to just read without any distraction, focus mode. So now let's come back to the print layout view. This is what we work on. This is where we will spend most of our time. Now, any good document, any good document, you will want to break into some sort of headings, some sort of headings. I don't say it has to be chapter 1, but I'm just writing chapter 1 over here. Okay, chapter 1, chapter 2, and so on. Now, this is a heading that we understand. How do we let Word know that this is a heading? How can I tell Word, how can I tell Microsoft Word that look, this is a heading? And I can do that by using one of the heading styles. Okay, using one of the heading styles. So if I'm going to use the heading style over here, I will also have to use the heading style here and throughout the document. Okay, now because this is a second chapter, I may want to have this on another page. I may want to have this on another page. So how do I do? Control Enter, right? Control Enter will take me to another page. It'll open chapter 2 in another page altogether, right? So I can bring, once again I'll show you, bring it here and say Control Enter. So that puts it to chapter 2. Okay, now if you see my chapter, assume there are more of these kind of chapters. uh, Let me actually have a few more of these chapters. Chapter 3, and I'll just have the same text again. And chapter 3, yeah. All right, so now all of these are in different pages. All of these are in different pages. Okay, so there are a few different tricks that you can do while reading. Okay, first thing is, all this entire white space that you see here is also distracting, because when you are over here, especially if you are using a slightly smaller screen, I'm using a large monitor so it's okay, but if you are using a slightly smaller screen, you might find this very distracting. Chapter 1, and then there's a lot of white space, and chapter 2, by the time you come to chapter 2, you can no longer see what the chapter 1 was. Depending on what kind of document you're working on, these things can be a lot of irritation. So over here I'm going to break it again into chapter 3, and the same thing, by the time you are in chapter 3, chapter 2 has disappeared. So what do? You can collapse all of these pages from your view. Okay, now how do you collapse the pages, collapse the spaces from your view? You see that gray area, you see that gray color area between the two pages. Bring your mouse there and you see it changes to two small arrows, right? Double click that. When you double click that, all of those spaces have collapsed. Remember, the spaces have not disappeared. The spaces have not disappeared. They have merely collapsed, right? They have merely collapsed. So you see, it's that white space is gone, and now it's looking like one single big page. But if you print, it is not going to be one single big page. It is still going to print exactly the way we have made it. Okay. Now, if you see here, how do you still know? You still want to know where is a page break? The page break is shown by this small dotted line, this thin little dotted gray line that shows the page break. So that tells me I have deleted the page break for chapter 2. So let me just bring that back. I have brought it back, and a gray line has again appeared over there. So this makes it a lot more intuitively nice to read. Again, this is not changing anything in the final text. This is just changing the way you read. How do you get back to the original view from it? You can get back to the original view by once again bringing your mouse on top of that. Okay, now it is showing you arrows outwards. That means it is showing you that you can expand the space. So double click over there, it has come back to the original form that it was in, right? Just a way to read. Now that we have these chapters will also make navigation very easy for us. How do I do this kind of navigation? So if I just go to find and replace, okay, so I can go from here directly, I can go from here to find, right? If I click this, then I can come to navigation. So if I do navigation, if I go to navigation, if you're on older ones, then you won't see this navigation. Some of the recent ones, I think 2013 onwards, you will see navigation. Go to headings, and you see all of my chapters are here together. Okay, so I want to directly move to chapter 3. Sure. I want to directly go back to chapter 1. Sure. Okay, if I have 50 pages, and imagine being able to see all of the pages visually over here, I want to move to page 43. Sure, you can go back, click, and go to page number 43. So let me just show you something with the longer one. Okay, so this maybe has more pages, 22 pages. Yeah, so you look at this, I want to move to any of these pages, I can very quickly, actually more pages, right? So it's very, very easy to go back to one page or the other that you have to go back. Now, when you are working on a long document such as this, you would often have found while reading, you may realize that, you know, some of these lines over here, they seem to be very, very similar, or they seem to be the same lines which have again got repeated towards the end of the document. Happens sometimes, right? So how can you be sure? How can you be sure that that is actually the case or that is not the case? You can do that by splitting this into two different parts. So you go to view, right? And you say split. That splits your document view into two parts. So right now over here on the top, I am on page 2, okay? And the bottom view, I can go to page 40, right? And now it's very easy for me to compare page 2. Now note I'm on the same document, right? Half, the top half of my screen is looking at page 2 of the document. The bottom half of the screen is looking at page 40 of the same document. All right. So if I have to make any changes here, I can make changes here also. I can make changes here also. I want to copy a line, or I want to cut something from here, right, and put it over here. Sure, I can do that, right? I have just managed to cut something from page 2 and copy that or paste that on page 40 without the need to scroll up and down so many times. Otherwise, what would you have to do? You would have to cut from page 2, scroll all the way till you are page 40, or use navigation to go to page 40 and then come there and paste. By the time you paste, you will find that, hey, what were the other lines around it, the line before, the line after, and things like that. You would have forgotten that, and again you will have to go back to that, right? So all of those things are now over. All of those kind of things are now over. So with just by splitting, now you've done whatever you had to do. Let us remove the split. So there are two ways I can remove the split. One is by clicking this button and going to remove the split, or the other is by manually pushing this away. You push it away and the split is gone. You push it the other way, the split will also disappear, right? Now assume you are reading here, okay? Assume you are reading over here, okay? And let's say, um, okay, so let's say you are reading here, right? You are reading here, and let's say you are using the navigation. You are using the navigation to now go to directly page 42. You are here now, okay? Now you want to go back to where you were originally. You were somewhere, you were reading somewhere, you just want to go back to that particular location or that particular point. How do you go back quickly? You go back there by pressing Control Alt and Z. If you press Control Alt and Z, that will take you back to where you were originally. Okay, Control Alt and Z will keep shifting it back to where you were. If you're using, I don't know how many of you are, in the audience are using Mac, but if you're using Mac, the commands are largely the same, except where I say Control for Windows, For Mac, it is command. Where I say Alt for Windows, for Mac, it is option. So Control Alt Z becomes Command Option Z in Mac. That's really the only difference. Okay. And Shift is the same. So Control Shift in Windows becomes Command Shift on the Mac. Otherwise, there are no real changes. Okay. So I showed you that navigation. All right. Okay. Now imagine there is another situation where you want to have this paragraph, right, which has to be moved to page 40, but also not just this paragraph, also this paragraph, partial of this paragraph, half of this paragraph. So this entire thing and this entire thing, right? One, I'm just highlighting to show, and this. Assume these few lines need to go to page 40. Okay. What are the ways you could do that? How can you do that? Right? You can do that by selecting this paragraph. Just to refresh your memories, how can we select? We can select it from the mouse like this, or I can triple click to select the paragraph. So I can do that, and I can right click and cut, or I can just press Control X. Control X will also cut. Okay. Navigate to whatever page I need to go. Okay, this is one way to do. This is one way to do it. And then I'll have to come back to the original page. So I'll have to come back to the original page, and then I will have to remove the second one. Okay, that's one way to do. I'll give you another way. Another way is by using something called the spike area. So there is something on Microsoft Word called the spike area. Spike area is like a temporary holding area. The good thing for spike area is that you can combine multiple text like this. Okay, cut, you can't cut this and this, right? Maybe you can do that. I'm not saying you can't do that, but then it becomes difficult. Here both are on the same page, so it's easier. But if they are like a few words here, a few words there, a few 3 lines from the third page, and so on, all of that have to go to the end together, then this becomes easier. Spike is a much simpler way to do this. So first you select this, okay, and press Control and F3. So Control and F3 I'm pressing. That has the action of cutting it, right? Again, I'll come here, press Control and F3. Notice I haven't pasted anything. I have managed to take both of them away. Okay. So now I want to bring it all to page 46. So I come to wherever I want to bring it to. Okay, my insertion point is over there. Now I go to insert menu. You see there is something called quick parts. I go to quick parts, right? There is auto text under quick parts, and the third one is spike. Okay, third one is spike. So that has brought whatever I wanted it to bring. It has also brought something that I had done earlier, but brought whatever I needed to bring. So all of these now I can just remove. The highlight was anyway there just to show you what I'm bringing. I can remove the highlight. Okay, so you see that is the use of spike. Now auto text is also used for repetitive text. Okay, now if I'm on creating a document that I create, okay, clearly name is something that I would have multiple times, right? So name is something which you will find under quick parts, auto text, full name. You will also find quick parts, auto text, you will find initials. Okay, so these are the kinds of things that you can find on auto text. So it saves me the effort of filling in the name multiple times. So I can do this also for a particular document. I can just say that always insert the author name in the first capital, and I can say that this will be the place where it will come. Okay, so this is the name of the author. How do I know this is the name of the actual author of the document? This comes from document properties, right? This comes from the document properties. Who originally authored the document is this particular person, Ana Fiorella Carvajal. Okay, so this is from, I think, World Bank, so it's Argentina capital markets. Every time I want to know who the author, or I want to insert the name of the author in this document, then this particular thing would be from quick parts, fields and author name. Okay, now the good thing here is, suppose I manually go to document properties and change the name of the author, then all of the occurrences of this would also change. I do not have to do this manually again and again every single time.